In this video, we're going to be taking a comprehensive look at the Access 2010 hybrid application architecture. First, we'll go through some PowerPoint slides to talk about the architecture and then dive into a demo that really showcases all of the features. Put simply, a hybrid application is a combination of native Access objects running in Access 2010, native Access objects in the runtime of Access 2010, and Access web objects in the browser, all running against SharePoint 2010 and Access services. The advantages of the hybrid application are that you can mix and match these clients, hence the term hybrid. The higher transaction and complexity type of environments can run in the native Access or Access runtime mode, while the lower transactional requirements and complexity can be handled inside of the browser. But beyond that, the important piece is that all of the tables are stored in SharePoint 2010 and SQL Server. This provides high availability and scalability, and everything is secured via Active Directory or any other SharePoint 2010 authentication provider. With all of that in mind, let's now take a look at the process of creating a hybrid application from scratch. We're going to start with the native Access table that was created in a previous version of Access, and you can tell by the icon that it's not a web table yet. We'll go ahead and show you a shortcut for getting that information over to a web table. If we copy all of the fields to the clipboard and then create a new web database, making sure that we retain the information on the clipboard because we're going to use it in just a second. Underneath Click to Add, right-click and then select Paste as Fields. And this is a quick and easy way of taking an existing Access database table and moving it into a web legal format. So now you can see the icons change. We are in a web legal format, and we can move forward with the creation of our hybrid application. Now that we've created our web table, we're going to give it a more recognizable name. And after we've gone ahead and renamed the table, we want to add some new functionality, which is a relationship between this table and another table that we're going to go ahead and create from scratch. So if we go up to the Create menu and click on Table, we're just going to create a single field table that will be used as a lookup in the original pinball sales table. And we'll type some values in for the different manufacturers of pinball machines, which is currently not part of the database, and then create a lookup relationship between these two web tables. We'll go ahead and save that table as manufacturers. And then back on the pinball sales table, we'll go ahead and extend the schema of this web table to include a lookup field. And this will invoke the lookup wizard, where we can either type in the values directly or, in this case, go ahead and reference another table. So we've created a relationship inside of the web database between these two tables in the Access database. We specify which field, whether we want them sorted in the list box, and go ahead and click Finish. So at this point, we've established a true relationship between these two tables, but we're still running on our local machine. So what we need to do next is run through the compatibility checker, make sure there are no problems with the database as it exists, and then go ahead and publish it out to SharePoint. To start the SharePoint publishing process, go up to the File menu, drop down to Save and Publish, and then select Publish to Access Services. Once you've typed in your server URL and the site name, which is really the name of the web database application that you're publishing, you'll be prompted for the credentials on the SharePoint site, and you can go ahead and post those two tables that we've created out to the SharePoint server. Before doing this, you might want to run the compatibility checker. In this case, we have a very simple database, so we wouldn't expect any problems, but if you are bringing in a lot of different tables, forms, queries, and reports from an existing version of Access, you might want to go ahead and double check the compatibility before you go through the publishing routine. Again, after authenticating, we go ahead and synchronize the web application that previously existed only on our desktop, and we get back a web URL, which is the location for the new published web application. Now if we go ahead and visit that web application in the browser, you'll see that we have the 3 tables out there on a web page, but we really haven't introduced any other web functionality, and that we're going to change that right now. We'll go back into Access, clear the security warning, and open up our pinball sales table again, and we're going to go and create a few forms and reports. The first one we'll do is a multiple item edit form, which if we've got pinball sales already highlighted, it creates for us. We're not going to make any changes just yet to save time, and we'll save that form. We'll also use the same technique to create a new report. And again, the globe icon indicates that it's going to be a web-based object. And we've got a decent looking report right out of the gate. Again, we could make modifications to that, but in the interest of saving time, we'll go ahead and just save that as a pinball sales report. And the final piece is we want to create a web navigation screen. So we'll go back up to Create and drop down the navigation button and create a web-based navigation. Now the easy way to add the horizontal tabs to your navigation is simply drag and drop that form and that report that we just created into the navigation form, and then go ahead and save those changes as well. So now we've created 2 forms and 1 report. We can go back up, and under the options menu of the file drop down, we can then, underneath current database, set the web display form to be the navigation form we just created. So this really operates much like an auto-exec macro, in that when you come to the web page, instead of seeing all the objects in the database the way we did before, we're now going to see that navigation form. We press sync and publish those changes out to the web, and now we can go back to the browser, refresh the page, and we will see that the navigation form is now the first thing we see when we come to the site. So now we've got some web objects defined, and we are effectively operating as an Access web database. Now the Access web database that we've created is actually a pretty full-featured client experience. If you go ahead and make a change to any of the row level data, you'll see in the top right hand corner of the screen that the record has been updated, and that's just JavaScript inside the browser. Does not have to be Internet Explorer. We do support Safari and Firefox as well as Chrome, and you can use the VCR controls at the bottom of the form to go ahead and add new records, or use the tabs in that navigation form to go ahead and generate reports. So there is a pretty full-featured client experience, but it still doesn't come close to what you get out of native Access. So really the next step in the hybrid application development is going to be to create some native Access forms and reports alongside of these web objects. Once again, we want to start by highlighting pinball sales and go up to the Create menu, only now we're going to go a little bit further to the right and use the drop-down for client forms, and now we have the luxury of being able to use the form wizard to create our native Access forms. And the form wizard is probably familiar to you if you're coming from a previous version of Access. This is creating now an object that can only be used in either the Access 2010 client or the Access 2010 runtime, but you do get quite a bit more flexibility in designing a form for native Access than you do creating a object or a form for a web-based client. So now we've gone ahead and created a form, and much like the web and browser-based example, we're going to go back and create now a report. And creating a report certainly also has the benefit of the report wizard that's been built into many versions of Access, and it makes it very easy to select the fields that you want, select the layout, and really get a full-featured report design experience. And we'll go ahead and run through the wizard and save that object into our Access database. So what we've really got now is a true hybrid application. There are both web forms and reports sitting alongside of native Access forms and reports. and we'll give it a name that recognizes it as a native object. And then finally, we need to create a native navigation form for the Access clients. We'll do that by going up to Create, and underneath Client Forms at the bottom of the list you see the navigation options, which are very similar to the web-based navigation forms, and you can also use that drag and drop technique that we used earlier. It's important to note that you can mix and match in the native Access navigation form both native and web objects. Here we've got the web form and the native form sitting side by side. So all of the web forms are upward compatible with native Access, but the reverse is not true. We'll go ahead and save that navigation form. And now we want to go back to the options that we were looking at before to set the startup form for web clients, and we want to use this new native navigation form as the default display form for Access and Access 2010 runtime clients. Of course, we do need to restart the application in order for that to happen. We're going to do that in just a minute in the runtime. We can go ahead and sync all those changes back to the server. And now we're pretty far along. We've really got a true hybrid app running with navigation forms for web and native clients alongside of forms and reports for both web and native clients. And if we go and look at the settings past the default startup form, you can see all of that stuff sitting out there stored inside of SharePoint. Now at this point, if we have a new user who needs access to the application, there's a little trick to setting them up very quickly and easily. If we go under Options and go back to Settings, you'll see at the top of the screen the ability to modify the database if you have access. If you right-click there and save that file, it's an ACCDW file, and that's a very small shortcut to the published web application. So any new user, whether they're coming at it from Access 2010 runtime or native Access, can simply click on that file and they will have all of the tables already connected to SharePoint and all of the web objects available to them. Now if you want to see what that ACCDW looks like in the runtime, you can go ahead, drop out to a command prompt and navigate to the directory where your msaccess.exe file is stored, and type in the msaccess.exe along with the ACCDW file and then the /runtime switch. And this will actually invoke the loading of that web database in the runtime mode, even though you have the full-blown copy of Access on your desktop. So if we go ahead and do that, what we're going to see, and the easiest way to tell that you're not in full-blown Access is down in the bottom right-hand corner after you authenticate. You'll see the Powered by Microsoft Access and the Online with SharePoint icons in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. But that's telling you that you are connected to a web application and you're running the native Access objects inside the Access 2010 runtime. So hopefully at this point you've got a better understanding of what constitutes a hybrid application in Access 2010. And if you're interested in learning more about this, please visit accesshosting.com. And if you're interested in using a hosted version of Access services in SharePoint, we do offer a 30-day trial, and we'd be happy to host the back end of this architecture on your behalf.